Joining me now with breaking news is Nick Hulscher. Look at this from thefocalpoints.com. Breaking study MMR, that's measles, mumps, and rubella, and MMRV vaccines linked to 2,657% more U.S. deaths than measles infection itself since 1995. Nick, breaking news, brand new study. I think we're one of the first interviews to have you on about this, right?
Yeah, you're the very first one, and this is absolutely shocking. So we looked at the VAERS database, looked at all of the deaths following the MMR and MMRV shots since 1995 and even before. And we did find the MMR and MMRV vaccines have been linked to 2,600% more deaths than measles infection since 1995. You can't make this stuff up. So for the past 30 years, the MMR shots have been killing more children, far more children than measles has. And so this is absolutely terrible. And we identified hundreds of infants and toddlers that died after these shots, often from SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, cardiac arrest, seizures, encephalitis. So it's killing some of these children. And most of these kids, they died within about 2 weeks. So a majority died within 2 weeks after the shot. 40% died within 1 week. So the temporality there checks out. And most of these deaths occurred ages 1 to 1.5, right when they get the MMR shots usually. So you can't make this stuff up.
Giving the children the vaccine so that in hopes they won't get the measles, but the vaccine killing at such a high rate. Whereas if they'd had the measles themselves, it wouldn't have been the end of the world. And we would have learned that should we have followed the advice of Carol and Mike Brady, because in the 1960s, there was a whole TV show with the Brady family getting the measles, and nobody was freaking out, if you remember. It was just a good opportunity to be off of school, and everybody was pretty excited in the Brady family. I don't remember them saying, oh, we all should have gotten vaccinated for the MMR, for measles, right?
Yeah, they've never said that. They got the measles infection, very mild, far less case fatality rate than the flu, and vast majority of kids would recover. You're right, they had the measles parties. But now, instead of that, they're just inoculating them with these monster shots with 3 to 4 antigens combined in them, and they're just killing more children than so-called saving. And so this is very serious. We identified a very serious mortality safety signal with the MMR and MMRV vaccines. And so this cannot go on. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous just looking at the graph. I mean, are you kidding me? What doctor or public health agency could look at that graph comparing the measles deaths to the vaccine deaths and still think it's a good idea to administer them? It's not. And so we'll be sending this study to many important individuals, and we hope that they will take action.
Do most people whose children died know why they died? Were they told, oh, that was SIDS, we're so sorry, ma'am? Or was the doctor honest enough, the pediatrician honest enough to say, your child died because I recommended and pushed the MMR on you?
Yeah, vast majority. So VAERS is the vaccine adverse event reporting system is underreported by a factor of up to 100, right? So we found about 300 U.S. deaths among children. You got to multiply that by conservatively about 30, but up to 100, and you start to get to tens of thousands of children, infants, and toddlers dying from these shots. So yeah, they're not all recorded here. And so many of those sudden infant death syndrome cases are probably a result of this shot. I mean, 25% of these deaths were classified as sudden infant death syndrome. And so these shots are killing the babies in their sleep. It's absolutely disturbing, and particularly what they're dying from. So all of this combined in this study, I mean, it's unequivocal that these shots are deadly. The MMR and MMRV shots should not be given anymore. They should split them up if the parents still want them. Don't give this full load of garbage.
Indeed. So what about the parents who maybe have given this to their child in the last few weeks or months? Is there anything they can do? I mean, we don't want to cause parents and grandparents to freak out here, but if they've gotten this shot, is there anything parents can do? I mean, I don't give medical advice, so I want to be careful, but is there anything they can seek out for a professional to say, look, I gave this shot. Is there something I can do to limit the possible damages?
There's some things you can do. What you'll have to do is you'll have to monitor your child closely, and maybe even go get a checkup, ensure nothing's wrong, ensure he has proper respiration, his heart's doing fine. And, usually if you make it past 2 weeks after the shot, the baby should be fine. But again, we don't know for sure. So the critical window is that few weeks following the shot. And you gotta have to monitor your child if you did give them this MMR shot, simply because now we know basically for sure that this can result in death in some cases, and we don't want any babies dying here. This has got to stop, and I would not administer any more MMR vaccines personally. Ever again. I would never even think of it after conducting this study.
I want to go and download my book from 1995, Reclaiming a Nation at Risk. All right, here's the book right here. Because while you were talking, I was thinking about that book. I want to go and do the old Control F, put in vaccine, and look at this from 1995. Why are these clinics unconstitutional? Because as Jeffrey Botkin explains, talking about school-based clinics, they were given money and incredible powers, including latitude to administer super secret exams, vaccines. Let's see what else I said about vaccines in 95. Is it going to give me anything else? I know I said something else about it because we had Kennedy. We talked about Ted Kennedy having a bill that was tracking vaccines. Let me try another word, vaccinations. Because Ted Kennedy, he had a bill that was doing just that, tracking families that got vaccinated. They wanted to track them. They wanted to track as many of them as they could. And we were talking a lot about that. I wonder if, let's see here. I wonder if that Control F isn't fully working, because I know for a fact we talked extensively about that back in this book. We brought it up in other broadcasts, but I went in this book in 95. I'm going to go to another screen here to see if I can find it. But we know that there were families losing their kids. There were families that were fighting with CPS, Child Protection Services, over this very issue, Nick. So this is how much parents have to be angry that we're losing their children to CPS because they didn't want to do the vaccines, and now the vaccines turn out to have killed children and harmed children. It's just so stupid, the things that we have done as a country.
So what, that was 30 years ago. And everybody was ostracized or attacked, or CPS would come if you refuse these. And now 30 years later, there you go. It killed a bunch of kids, still are. And, there's got to be some sort of repercussions. The CDC and FDA and all of our public health agencies should have done this VAERS study that we just did many years ago, when all of the parents were raising the alarms for decades. They didn't do it. They didn't bother to. And so we finally did it. And hopefully there are repercussions. And if I were a parent and I found this out and I gave my child the MMR or MMRV shot, I would be very pissed off.
Indeed, I would. Well, look at here. Logan and I found it. This is my book from 95, Reclaiming a Nation at Risk. A national tracking system. Senator Kennedy's Comprehensive Child Immunization Act may sound like a positive endeavor, but apparently the senator has something more in mind. The registration and tracking of America's children through a government database of medical and personal information. Christy Hamrick with the FRC puts it this way, quote, today we're going to track all the measles vaccine, but tomorrow maybe we're going to track the measles vaccine and the religion of children, end quote. And I think this all came about because a parent objected. One vaccine that many parents object to is the hepatitis B vaccine. Okay. Here is the Wall Street Journal reported in 93 that one father who failed to have his daughter Christine vaccinated for measles. See, I remember I had covered this. What happened? Was convicted of breaking state child neglect laws. Quote, because of his conviction, the court had the right to place Kristen under social services agency supervision, or even take her away from her father and put her in a foster home. In this case, the judge did neither of those things since the measles epidemic was long over, end quote. Well, thankfully, the father got a common sense judge, but they could have. And now this is back in my book in 1995.
Man.
Look at this. In 1993, anybody, and you don't have to buy this book, folks. It's in the vault if you're a vault member at worldviewtube.com/vault, page 160. In 1993, Ted Kennedy proposed legislation known as the Comprehensive Child Immunization Act to help the government ensure that all 2-year-olds get immunized by the year 2000. Doug Phillips of the National Center for Home Education, which is the division of Homeschool Legal Defense Fund, has said, quote, it's a violation of parental rights for the state to assume the role of deciding what is in the best interest of the health of the child, end quote. Most parents have their children immunized against potential diseases. However, as Christy Hamrick of FRC noted, quote, there's a big difference between a tried and true vaccine and another vaccine that has resulted in the deaths of some children. We've always left that decision up to parents, end quote. World Magazine back in October of 93 stated that, quote, in a 24-month period ending in July 1992, 2,525 serious injuries were reported to the federal government following vaccines, and 360 persons died, end quote. Some parents object to certain vaccines, but under such federal legislation as the Comprehensive Child Immunization Act, parents who do not have their child immunized could be found guilty of child abuse. So I was right in that I had remembered talking about this, but it's even more in depth than I remembered writing about in 1995. So there you go. This is not a new thing. And now your research shows tonight that all these families back in the 90s that were going through this nightmare of potentially losing their children, and I'm sure some did, and being investigated, they were doing the right thing. And if they hadn't done it, their child may be injured or dead now. And where are all the apologies from all the bureaucrats and CPS workers? Where, again, we're governed by a nation of fools. The parents know best, right? You're too young to remember the old sitcom, Father Knows Best. Parents know best over the government. Almost every time the parent knows more and better what's for their child than the government.
Parents know best. Parents know best. They were right the whole time. They were right about autism, and they were right about SIDS, and they were right about the deaths and the serious injuries and everything under the sun. Because, a mother or a father does know their child. And, big pharma, big government does not. In fact, they don't give a damn about your family or your children.
They just want your money.
They just want your money.
Let's go back to thefocalpoints.com, thefocalpoints.com. What other big stories do we have tonight over here?
We got two other breaking stories. You'll see down there on the right, you'll see breaking. This one's very, very worrisome, but it confirms what we've been saying for the past 5 years. So what this study is by Raphael Lancaster. He's out of Australia. But what they did was he found 4 Australian regions in which there was almost no COVID activity and very brief lockdowns in 2021, but all of them had 90% mRNA injection uptake. And so it served as a natural experiment because you could isolate the effects of the shots without COVID or lockdowns. And so what they found was 98% of the excess deaths in these regions were not from COVID, which means they weren't from the lockdowns either. They must be from one thing and one thing only, the mRNA gene transfer injections. And so this basically proves that the excess deaths that we're seeing all across the globe are due to the injection. And we know for sure that, I mean, look at that. So 90% vaccinated, and then they get hundreds of excess deaths, none of them from COVID. And, you know, you can't really get a stronger ecological study than this one.
So their deaths were not from getting COVID. It was from getting the bioweapon shot. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, exactly. Because 90% of the population took them in these regions, and nothing else could explain why they started to drop dead. And so, yeah, this proves that these injections caused mass deaths wherever they were rolled out.
All right. Anything else?
Yeah, there's a breaking story. Senator Rand Paul, if you go down a bit, it's at the bottom of the page here. Yeah, there you go. Yep, right on the left. So this is absolutely huge. So Senator Rand Paul did just introduce a bill a few days ago to end the decades-long liability shield of Big Pharma. And so this is very, very important because the vaccine makers currently, if they injure children, if they kill children, you know, disable them, give them autism, kill them now, as we've shown in our recent study here, the vaccine makers, they're completely protected under the 1986 National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act. This bill by Senator Rand Paul would destroy that shield. It would shoot a flaming javelin into that shield. It will break it in half. Big Pharma will have nowhere left to run. They'll have to start paying out for all of the injuries, deaths, and disabilities that they've caused. And they will probably go bankrupt. And it will actually force them to make safer vaccines. They can't be rolling out untested injections anymore. So this bill, introduced by Rand Paul recently, it's got to go through. It's got to be put into law. This is actually vital to actually make America healthy again.
Oh, wow. All right, there you go, folks. Thefocalpoints.com, thefocalpoints.com. And it's amazing. It's taken decades. But what many, many parents knew in the 1990s, as evident going back through our archive of my book tonight, what parents knew, and I forgot about some of these stories in the Wall Street Journal and others. What these parents knew has taken decades, but now it has been proven true because the big headline story and breaking news is tonight, MMR and MMRV vaccines linked to 2,657% more U.S. deaths than the measles infection since 1995. And that's the year that book came out, by the way, 1995. My third book, Reclaiming a Nation at Risk. How ironic tonight.
Yeah, well, you called it back then, and here we are today, 30 years later, and we've killed children in droves, and nobody's been held accountable, but now we know, and now parents are going to be very pissed off.
Yeah, they are. Indeed, they are. Can you imagine losing your child to CPS for a while, or being investigated and accused of child abuse, when the whole time you were doing the right thing and the science agreed with you, but the experts were simply not listening or respecting common sense and parental authority? It should be a lesson to us, folks, because I'm afraid we're entering very choppy waters to come. And at some point, the American people are going to have to remember we are the government, a government of the people, by the people, for the people. And we do not grant consent for their man-made laws that they write through just vague committees, unaccountable bureaucrats who make these decisions and statutory implications. We don't have to follow them. You know, even the Nuremberg trials show we shouldn't have to follow these things. Isn't that what the Nuremberg Code's all about?
Yeah, exactly. You know, no experimentation on human beings, but that's exactly what's been happening for decades and decades and decades. And it's got to come to an end. It's got to come to an end.
Thefocalpoints.com tonight. Thank you for reaching out to us. This afternoon to tell us that we need to cover this breaking story tonight. Thank you so much, Nick, for all you do there with Dr. Peter McCullough and the McCullough Foundation.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. Glad you got me on to get this important news out. And for anybody watching, if you want to support the McCullough Foundation, please do so. We do run on donations for our vital research.
And it is vital research. There you go. Thefocalpoints.com, thefocalpoints.com. Thank you so much, Nick.
Thank you.